Sounds great. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Elizabeth Svensson, and I am the industry leader for health here at Aquent. Aquent is a global work solutions company, and we specialize in offering talent recruitment in the creative marketing and digital space. We also offer agency services, project management solutions, and sustainability consulting to help businesses thrive in an ever-changing environment. Before we get started, I just wanted to mention a few housekeeping items. So today's webinar will be about 45 minutes long, which includes 10 minutes for Q&A, which will happen at the end of the webinar. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat, and we'll get to them at the end. The webinar will also be recorded. We'll share the replay with you after the event. We are really excited to have you with us and to sponsor this webinar together with Shetal Vyas. Let me tell you a little bit about Shetal. Shetal is a recognized commercial transformation executive in the life sciences industry. Her expertise in building synergies between omnichannel strategies and generative AI, particularly as it pertains in commercialization, has made her a sought-after consultant and speaker on these topics within our industry. She most recently served as the general manager of uro-oncology at Ferring Pharmaceuticals, where she spearheaded the establishment of their uro-oncology division and the launch of a groundbreaking gene therapy. As if this is not enough, she has also received industry accolades such as the MM&M Pinnacle Award and the Pharmaceutical Executives Emerging Pharma Leaders. We're so happy to have you here, Shetal, and a warm welcome, and we can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Elizabeth, thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for the really kind words, gracious introduction. I am very excited to be here, and thank you, Aquent, for hosting this webinar. What an exciting time to be a marketer in the life sciences industry. There are so many amazing opportunities and innovations that we get to actually leverage so that we can get product to the ultimate consumer and the patient. And we do that with a level of efficiency. I'm excited to share with you our agenda for today. And we're going to walk through a lot of different levels of changes that we've embraced already, as well as the upcoming changes and opportunities to leverage technology to market to our end users and consumers. So I'll start with the overview of the evolution of our digital marketing and how we've gotten to where we are today, and really then going into optimizing omnichannel strategies so that when we do that, we can truly leverage generative AI and the shift that is upcoming with content at scale and hyper-personalization at scale. I'll review some of the current use cases of generative AI in our industry, and then talk a bit about adoption, some practical advice I have for leading change when it comes to technology and embracing technology. And then we'll open up, as Elizabeth said, for question and answer for about the last 10 minutes. As a reminder, please put your questions into the chat as you come up with them. And then we've got Carol monitoring them. So as we get into this, I really want to level set the things that we're going to review, just digging a bit deeper into the agenda, really focusing on mastery of omnichannel. I'm going to really talk about why that's important and why engagement through an omnichannel ecosystem is going to be the absolute essential need so that we can leverage generative AI. We want to the goal is to gain real-time insights, enhance content creation, and really meet our customers where they are and truly captivate their engagement. We can't do that without the core of this. It's responsible AI practice. And responsible practices of AI and ethical practices encompass a lot of different things, but at the core of it, it really is data. We are using data, and transparency is really important on how we use data, and really making sure that we don't have any unintended outcomes based on bias or biases that the data can actually pull out. And so that precision is really important, that data-driven precision, because that will help us lead to hyper-targeted messages and real-time messages to the right audience at the right time. So that's the overview of where we're going to go. I wanted to go back and take a big step back and look at a historical view of where we've been. Our industry has been slow to adopt, and rightfully so. We are highly regulated. And through this time frame, we've really had a core piece of ensuring that we engage our audience. In the last 10 years or 12 years, for consumer brands, engagement has become the new loyalty. I was reminded of this by Harvard professor Youngmi Moon most recently. She reminded us that this is the new economy. Engagement is the new economy in consumer. I can argue that in life sciences, engagement has been the loyalty since we've started selling and marketing. And so a couple of examples. When we talk about our old engagement models, especially in pharmaceuticals, we had a lot of share of voice out, large sales teams engaging physicians. And so that when a patient presented, we had the physician sort of think top of mind our product to meet the patient and that patient's unmet medical need. And so that engagement model was really a lot of share of voice out. As we started to expand on our digital channels, we then started to explore channels that can actually create better engagement offline and online. And so supplementing that online engagement, in-person engagement with the online banner ads, et cetera. We started to then sort of dip our toe into that social media. And I remember, early days in my marketing journey, we had a Facebook page for a brand for about a day and a half, and we actually had to take it down because regulators asked us to take it down because of the comments. And so we've come a long way since then, and really utilizing social media, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, et cetera, for that additional engagement. That's then actually brought us to this data-driven marketing. And so we've got a lot of data-driven programmatic advertising that's happening in the 2010s. And then taking that into that, pandemic period where we really pushed into omni-channel integration, really getting that data to work for us and accelerating the use of machine learning. So next best action, our CRM is really turning on, and then really starting to dip our toes into actual AI use as well. And so this is sort of where we are. It's a slow adoption because if you think about omni-channel, when we started to adopt in the 2020s, omni-channel's been around for about 15 years now in marketing. And so we have been slow to adopt for multiple reasons. And one obviously being that we're in a highly regulated industry. That omni-channel ecosystem is really, the core is really off of a data-driven content marketing. And so there are a lot of things that we can gain. What we've seen, and in my experience, it's helped us target the content better, target customers in an ideal way, optimize the performance of our campaigns, obviously had hyper-personalization or added a level of personalization, but then also had the data infrastructure to help us continue to improve on the campaigns and measure outcomes. On the flip side, and I put cons on the side, but really they're drawbacks. When we think about the drawbacks, there have been some real underlying data issues, data silos, complexity from an operational standpoint, a slower speed to insight. And those are some of the bigger things that have actually held companies back from truly embracing an omni-channel ecosystem. So we default quite a bit to a multi-channel system. Now, I've thrown out a couple of terms here, and I want to actually level set our understanding. And I know many of you, we've got a pretty broad audience here, are probably experts in most of this, but I just want to make sure that we're all talking the same language here. When we talk about multi-channel, it really is around each channel operating independently. And your brand is actually the focus. It's a brand-centric approach that is in that multi-channel strategy. And the integration isn't really there. So each channel has essentially its own strategy. So you've got your strategy for your digital channels, your in-person channels, et cetera. In an omni-channel world, what we're doing is we're actually interconnecting all of those channels. And so that digital interconnectedness is there. The customer is at the center. And so the strategies actually start with the customer insights, and then all channels are fully integrated so that customer actually gets information when they want it, at the time they want it or need it, so that they can make the appropriate decision. And so in an omni-channel world, as you're thinking through your marketing strategies, your customer potentially could be an employer if you're an insurance company. Your customer can be a healthcare provider or a patient at the end if you're running a patient campaign. And when you're looking at all of those customers, your strategy is going to be different because of the preference of that individual and that channel preference and how they engage. And so that engagement, again, like I said, becomes that ideal world for us, is to have that ideal engagement with each set of customers and each customer individually as well, so that when the patient or the end user presents, your product is at top of mind to help create, to actually get into that unmet need and present that opportunity for a solution with your product. I actually wanted to take an opportunity and actually understand where the audience is in their journey. Now that I've sort of level set multi-channel and omni-channel, I wanted to pull the audience and just get a baseline understanding of where everybody is in their omni-channel journey. So I've got Carol, who is with Aquent. Carol's going to help us. Carol, if you can pull up the poll. So how would you describe your company's current stage in adopting and integrating omni-channel strategies for customer engagement? And so you've got the haven't started yet, just beginning, in progress, fully integrated, and leading edge. And so if you can go ahead and just vote, and we'll get some results in a second. Carol, let me know when we've got, a good, probably 80% of the audience that's actually added their response to the poll.
Okay. And Shetal, one of the questions that came in is, can you give some examples of what are the channels in the life sciences industry? And I just bring that up because that might help people as they're answering the poll to really be able to assess where they are.
Absolutely. So, and when we talk about channels, we've got our digital channels, which would include website, banner ads, anything that's digital campaign driven. We've got our social media channels, which are our social platforms. We've also got our in-person channel, which is our sales channel. So those are different types of channels that you can consider. And again, the focus of omnichannel is integrating all that data from all of those different channels together and actually having that omnipresence of your campaigns within each of those channels. Multi-channel would be you'd operate your sales channel separate from your web, separate from your social media.
So Shetal, we're about at 50%. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results.
Sure. Great. Okay, so we've got the majority of us sort of in the middle, just in that in progress space. A good handful in haven't started or just beginning, and then a handful in the fully integrated and leading edge. So congratulations to those leading edge. That is very exciting. This is not much different, and I've talked on this topic at multiple conferences in the last 3 years. The results here are not shocking to me. Many are right in that middle piece where some things are going well, some things are not, and they're in progress in that omni-channel journey. So the good thing is you're right where most people are, and the interesting piece of this is that as an industry, we lag behind on omni-channel adoption. So Carol, I'm going to close the poll, and that was my poll slide. So I'll go to this. As I mentioned, we do lag in the adoption and what success, and I'm going to talk a bit about how to actually get beyond just that, we're in progress to the next set. There are 3 different areas where I see, and I've engaged a lot of marketers, a lot of operational leaders to understand where the lags are and where sort of the sticking points are in our industry to take on the adoption and succeed with it, to get to that world-class experience or leading edge omni-channel strategy piece. So complexities in our industry and, multiple stakeholders. So we all, whether you are in medical device, in pharmaceuticals, or on the payer or insurance side, we all deal with juggling the needs of not just regulators, but healthcare providers, patients, payers, multiple stakeholders, and how do you actually create an omni-channel strategy for that multi-stakeholder dynamic? That's one of the big questions that comes up all the time. We also deal with the regulatory hurdles. Although we've come across and come through a lot of those hurdles in the last 3 years, fully leveraging omni-channel capabilities the way consumer brands do is not possible in our industry. And I'll say this because when we initially started these journeys, a lot of the learnings were from consumer brands, direct to consumer. We are highly regulated, so our messaging, the information that we share, our labels, all of that have to be taken into consideration. We can't have creative campaigns that are wildly different from yesterday. So our messaging has to be core to our label and our brand on the pharma med tech side. And so those are really where a lot of people get stuck in the initial strategic piece of, should we take this on or not? And a lot of the lessons learned here from myself and those that I've actually engaged with and spoken with are that it's not impossible. We actually now have really great partners in the industry who have created ways to actually overcome these hurdles. And so what we experienced about 5 years ago in the early phases is no longer there as obstacles in some of these. So maybe if you're still stuck there, revisit and start to think about different types of partners you can engage with and how they can help you get through these complexities. The other thing is I would challenge internal colleagues from legal to compliance to really look at the newest, latest, and greatest updates from our regulators and how other companies are overcoming some of this. The second part is the tech and data challenge. This is probably the, I think, hardest one to overcome because of data silos. We've got systems in place that are legacy systems in many companies that need to be integrated. That fragmented customer interaction. We've got data from, different channels sitting in different areas. Bringing all of that into one place is really not the easiest, but not impossible. So start small. It really is around bringing that data and tech together. Start with data lakes, start with smaller end in mind type of goals to say, we're going to engage with a few channels brought into the same system, and then we'll start to integrate other channels. And then, there's a tendency to focus on the technology too much. I will say, I've said this many times in speaking events, when you start with technology, it's incredibly difficult to adopt. Any change, any tech change, and even omni-channel adoption is a human change. And so start with where you are with your skill sets, with your teams, and where you are in your adoption. And then the culture of resistance. There is we're in a tried and true system of share of voice out, RX in, or, share of voice out, contract in. And so that has been the tried and true. And so it's difficult when you've seen success in that to change from that and adopt to an omni-channel world. This is really important. This is not an exercise to eliminate your in-person channel. This is actually an exercise to help elevate that in-person channel. And I think a lot of the times this cultural resistance actually comes when marketing and sales sort of aren't aligned, that this is where we work together to optimize that in person. Not just sales, especially in medical device and pharma, the medical team as well. It actually is a key component of this omni-channel world, and integrating all of the touch points is vitally important. So these are typically where we lag in adoption. So I've got another poll question around omni-channel. Just to, now that I've kind of outlined what I've heard and seen as adoption hurdles, I wanted to get the audience's take on where they're seeing the hurdles, right? So Carol, we've got that thick middle where people are adopting, they're in the middle of the journey. What's really getting in the way? What are the biggest challenges? Is it the lack of tech integration, alignment of teams, silos, limited data or insights, resistance to change, or regulatory concerns?
We'll leave the poll open for about another 30 seconds.
Sure.
We have lots of votes coming in. So
Great.
if you're not sure where the poll is, look at the bottom of your screen over on the right-hand side, and it's the polls and quizzes. It's right next to the More button. So one button in on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. Awesome.
Are we close to 50% or a little bit
Oh,
above?
we're at 43, so we need a couple more people to vote so we can hit statistical significance.
Great.
So, all right, last chance, drop in your answer, where you are. Okay, so Shetal, I'm gonna go ahead and close the poll.
Wonderful.
We're almost, yeah. Okay, perfect. Here we go. And then we share the results.
Great. Okay. All right. So we've got a little bit of a third, tech integration, team silos, and regulatory concerns with a little bit of resistance to change and limited data insights. Okay. So again, I'm not surprised by this at all. I think this is, again, where I've seen many companies and many teams, especially marketing teams, come out and say, we've started this journey. How do we navigate the path forward? We're in the middle of the journey and we're sort of stuck in it. We've got our technology at a good level. How do we get to the next phase? We've got our teams in the systems. We've got our integration, but yet we're still not getting the full adoption from our in-person or field teams. So here's some things that I would recommend in navigating the path forward. Take a step back. You started with a strategy in this omni-channel world and omni-channel journey. I would revisit that leadership and collaboration. It's not from my experience, it hasn't just been success hasn't just led from backing of leadership, but the involvement of leadership, really articulating why this is important. The effort of gaining efficiency alone is important, but the efficiency that we can see in our collaboration with healthcare providers or collaboration with the end customer or getting the patient the product sooner, right? And the value of why we do it and the leadership being able to articulate that, as well as a team that's actually pulling this through, is really important. So revamp that as a part of that strategy and that strategic focus. A lot of times we start these journeys, tech journeys, we put a lot of investment in upfront with the technology. The investment should also be in upskilling your analytics team, and as well as skill building for the marketing, commercial operations, sales teams that are involved in this change. And so balancing that investment out to make sure that the training needs, the skill building needs are also addressed in that. I would also revisit how you phased. If you've started and you jumped all in, dial it back a little bit and think through end in mind. If you want to get to full omni-channel integration, what are some of the quick wins that you need to deliver? And then how do you scale your effort across time and adopt and really be agile with the learnings as they come in? And really focus on the customer at the center, prioritizing that data-driven. Are we truly engaging the customer with every channel? And how are we looking to drive that engagement? And then that leads to the experience you want to create for your brand as well. And then the last is really around resetting, right? Rely on your champions. As many of you are in the middle of the journey, even if you're early in the journey, you will find in your organization there are people who are experienced with this. Leverage them, bring them in, talk to them about what's worked in the past, what's not worked in the past, how to really pull it through, and how to avoid some of the pitfalls. Put them on stage at POAs, really get their voice out there so that you can build additional champions and people who are believers. And then look at your resourcing, and revamp a lot of the plans that you've started with to see how you can actually now take the leap from where you are today to the next set of omni-channel adoption. And then the future of the Gen AI content integration. So these are some of the things that you can do to navigate the path forward with omni-channel. I've talked quite a bit about omni-channel. It's interesting because actually I was talking to a few people yesterday, and someone said, omni-channel and AI, there's fatigue around this conversation. And yet when we look at the poll results and when I engage with leaders, marketers, and customer engagement professionals in our industry, we're still not there yet. And so the value of getting this right is so incredibly important right now. And the reason I say that is because we're in a new age of adoption of technology. It's so important because we've had technology adoption across many years. To get to 1 million users, it's taken some time for brands like Netflix and even Facebook. But as you start to see, as we're getting closer and closer to new technology adoption, ChatGPT, 1 million users in a matter of days, 5 days. And then now with Instagram's Threads, in a day, 1 million users. So the adoption of technology from a general population standpoint is incredibly fast. And so our consumers, our customers in the life sciences industry are actually consumers and users of these technologies. They actually value agility, speed, creativity. And so if we're not actually adopting this in the manner that general population is adopting it, we're going to get left behind. One thing I will say is, we talk a lot about, efficiency and adoption. And, efficiency can mean a lot of things. And so adoption and efficiency, breaking that down is really important. There's a cost part of efficiency as well as there's the speed part of efficiency. I'm really talking about the efficiency and the speed part of it. Consumers, our customers will expect to have what they want when they want it at their fingertips. And so this content at scale and hyper-personalization at scale as marketers should be in the forefront of how we're planning our future campaigns. So this is where the big idea comes into play. So as we've gone through our historical view and our multi-channel world, kind of that timeline that I had gone through at the beginning, we really see that multi-channel world then shift into the getting the omni-channel right. So omnipresent, ensuring all of your channels are working together. And I think, Carol, you had said someone asked that question of what channels. Just an outline, so just some icons, but in-person channels, mobile, digital, email campaigns, print even, as well as anything that you do with speaking engagements, congresses, et cetera. All of that data that comes into one repository should be working together to get a full 360 view of the customer so that we can then generate insights and then revamp the engagement plans and the strategies for each of these types of customers. When we get that right, it's imperative to get that right so that we can then look at the future of what Gen AI can bring. And Gen AI, this is the promise of the future for marketing specifically in our industry, can actually help us bring forward AI-driven marketing campaigns and hyper-personalization and content creation at scale. And so you take all of that data and then you can start to automate a lot of what we're doing manually, or actually add speed and efficiency to it. Now, there is a cost component. Will we save money? Essentially, early on, yes, the costs will be lower because we are actually using more of the AI algorithm, the generative AI and machine learning to actually do a lot of the heavy lifting. Ultimately, I think the cost, my perspective is the cost will start to flatten out, because as we think through media purchases, the things that will start to absorb, we're going to have to bid for more of our share of voice in the digital world than we've had to in the past. And so it gets, in an incredibly noisy world already, it gets to be even more noisy in the future. Again, level setting, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. AI is a big, piece of innovation that means a lot of things. And so just to break down the language, when we talk about AI is really that simulation of the human intelligence, the machine actually mimicking, thinking like a human and learning how to problem solve, to automate a lot of tasks, enhance decision-making, and mimic our cognition. So you see examples like chatbots, voice assistants, image recognition, that's AI. Machine learning, believe it or not, we've been using it for quite some time in our industry. It's the systems that learn data and improve over time. And so this is the processing of a lot of data and programming over time and iterating on that data. And so predictive analytics is where we've seen this being applied in our industry. You see it in Netflix and Amazon when they recommend, your next movie to watch or the item to purchase based on your previous history. And so a lot of this currently is based off of historical data. And so we also, in our ecosystem, if we're in an omni-channel world, next best action from a sales standpoint or a marketing standpoint would be kind of an application of machine learning. Now moving forward are the large language models that have come into play that are being trained, continue to be trained. These large language models are actually trained on vast amounts of text data. And so they understand and generate and interpret human language, written language, perform large tasks, translate and summarize and answer many questions. Now, the future of that is that they then, are kind of paired with that AI, human intelligence piece. And so that historical perspective and then the actual decision-making engine together get you to the generative AI piece. And so that, images, patterns, codes, et cetera, are part of that Gen AI that can take what's in the large language model, machine learning, and put that AI system together so it can generate future content. And so when we talk about Gen AI in marketing, we're talking about content creation at scale, because you can actually take what's working and sort of apply that algorithmic model to it and that cognitive problem solving and create the next set of content. So last poll question, I promise I will not poll you after this again, but it's really important for me to also understand, and I think probably the rest of the audience to understand where everyone is in the use of generative AI. And so now you've got the definition, sort of really specifically getting to generative AI. How advanced is your company in using generative AI in your marketing practices? So not using it at all, exploring a bit, some limited use. So you've got maybe use cases, you've actually started to embed one use case into your practice now. Moderate use, you've got multiple cases, and extensive use, you've started to really think through strategically how you can market using Gen AI as a true engine. Give it a minute, Carol.
Yep.
Okay.
One question that came in, Shetal, maybe you want to answer while we're waiting. It just asks, were you speaking from a global, external to the US perspective? You know what I mean? In your definition of customers, I think that might help people just kind of orient around what you're sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes and no. So our, life sciences is a broad industry. And so when you talk about pharmaceuticals, yes, the end user being a patient and a healthcare provider being the person who's actually making that medical decision, sort of that ecosystem and customer stays true across the globe. When you think about other parts of life sciences, specifically because we're in a multi-payer system in the US, insurance companies are different versus a single payer system in most of Europe, a lot of different countries outside the US, it may not apply to be the same customer set. So you really do have to think through your customer set when you approach that strategic piece.
Okay, we have closed the poll, and so I'm going to share the results now.
Great. Okay, so this is the first time I've asked this question. This is very insightful. So we've got a good number not using it yet. A good handful sort of in that exploring limited use and moderate use place. And then, wow, it's surprising, 11%, so 5 out of 46 of you are in extensive use. That's great. I'd love to learn some of the use cases there. Again, I think that middle core is right where we should be in adoption. And now it's really thinking about, from an adoption standpoint, how do we get to that next level and next phase of use? So I'll close that, Carol, if that's okay. And I wanted to highlight some of the use cases, and I think those that are in that middle probably can resonate, or these will probably resonate with many of you. So there are 4 different areas, and these are just a few, right? A handful of cases. There are many, many more. I just bucketed them in the types of use cases. And so creating efficiencies. A lot of us who are in the pharma space, every piece has to go through a medical, legal, regulatory process. That process can take time, a lot of times iterations. And so companies like Aquent have actually started to think through having very clear, purposeful content that's accurate, starting with ensuring that that brief is really clear, and then starting to apply a large language model on the back end that can add efficiency. So that MLR process and the efficiency is a real clear example of kind of getting to that. And when you go back to the slide I had laid out, going from omni-channel to Gen AI, when we have content at scale, these types of efficiencies are going to be needed. So it's a great place to start. Start the efficiencies now so that when you get to that hyper-personalization and content at scale, you've got a system in place that's not going to overwhelm your medical legal review team. Another one is personalization. And so health plans have started to tailor their marketing resources to downline partners and customer segments using current sales data. AI starts to identify areas that you can focus on for marketing spend. So it's a real personalization effort on making sure that those customer segments and specific geographies get information and campaign information and marketing messages real time. Another example is a company that's actually piloting chatbots. This was fascinating. Actually, I found this out in a conversation with someone who was telling me a story about their mother who had a medical assistant bracelet. And he had gone to visit his mother and asked, how's this new setup? And she said, oh, let me show you how it works. And she sort of pushed the button on her bracelet, and the chatbot came on and said, Jean, how are you today? Jean says, I'm great. Thanks for asking. Chatbot says, is everything okay? Jean says, oh, everything is fine. My son's visiting today, so I'm just demonstrating how the system works. And so the chatbot says, oh, that's great. I hope your son has a great visit. Are you sure everything's okay? There are no emergencies. Jean says, yes, everything is fine. Chatbot says, okay, great. I'm here whenever you need me. And pleasant interaction. But this is a chatbot. This is an AI actually working as it should to actually engage that end user. A real great engagement example. And then the last one is really around insight generation. And a company actually using insight and actual physician information to track what information they consume, where they consume it, and based on this, they optimize their omni-channel promotional campaign. So essentially saying a physician attended a webinar, they spoke with a medical science liaison, and alerting the sales rep to say, it may be a great idea for you to follow up for an in-person discussion to close the loop on the information that they've received at the webinar. We don't share the information, obviously, from a medical interaction standpoint, but that touch point is shared. Clearly, this customer has some type of burning question or platform, and so that sales rep in person can actually help them navigate to the next opportunity to engage with content as well. And so that insight generation and closing that loop between the digital and in-person channels is another great way to use a generative AI and AI use case example. So these are the current examples. I actually wanted to, I started the webinar with 3 key areas: data, the future, but getting the omni-channel right, and the future to Gen AI. And then the core of this is really the ethics and compliance. And so I can not state this enough. It's really vital that we have ethics and compliance at the center of everything that we do. Actually, I'll steal a quote from someone who was in a roundtable with me. He had said, a human can make a mistake and it's forgivable, but when a machine makes a mistake, it is not forgivable. And so we really have to be hyper vigilant on how we roll a lot of this technology out. We have some, regulation outside the U.S. and, making sure that we're compliant with the regulations of every country that we're marketing in, making sure that we manage not just the reputational aspects of our company and our brands, but also the ethical considerations, because this is new and we've seen many times. One of the bigger things that we've seen is that a lot of unintentional discrimination can come out of a lot of these AIs, because what you put in is what you get out. And if you don't have a population that's represented, or an underrepresented population within the cohort of how you've programmed that Gen AI, then your output is going to be potentially discriminatory. So it's really important for us to make sure that we've got the right core data, we've got the appropriate representation. Privacy and transparency, of course, we want to make sure that people know that we're using data in the appropriate way, what types of data we're using. We always keep patient level data blinded, and make sure that there are appropriate firewalls in place. And so it is vitally, vitally important that we keep all of this in mind. I've got a few more minutes. I just want to be mindful of time. I want to actually talk about change. And so these change is not easy, right? But a lot, there were a good handful of you that actually said that you're leading the change. And so those of you that are leading the change, congrats. And we're all watching you, because every new change, this is a Bill Gates quote, right, forces all companies in the industry to adopt their strategies to that change. And so we're at this tipping point of change within how we actually market to our intermediaries and the ultimate consumers of our products. And all of you that are leading the change, it's incredible, and love to learn from you all, so that all of us that can be fast followers can learn and adopt quickly as well. A few pieces of advice on change, and I touched on a bit of this earlier. It's really, really important that, the change is focused on people versus just the technology. I was reading a McKinsey article that actually Elizabeth from Aquent shared with me the other day, and I'll quote the article: "Technology alone is not enough. You need to convert it into change in the ways that people and how it impacts business. And you start with identifying what opportunities there are in that." And so that was a September article from McKinsey on AI. And it very much rings true. I think we've learned a lot from all of our digital adoption, our omni-channel adoption. It really starts with people and business, and a lot of this will actually change how we conduct business. So it's important that strategically we think through building the right capabilities, having the right people in the seats, having that alignment between your in-person, your medical, your sales, your marketing teams, as well as having that technology stack and infrastructure and that internal operational capabilities within commercial operations. I always like to start with the end in mind. What do we want to get to 2 years from now, 5 years from now? And then let's work backwards and really think through what steps we need to take. It keeps your goal in mind and future forward, but it also helps you build an agile plan so that you can make adjustments along the way as you learn. And I always say, not just the technology and your commercial teams, your marketing and sales teams and commercial operations teams, but keep also your compliance, your legal colleagues moving with you, so that you all can come to decisions together and you can actually make decisions and be agile together. And of course, you want to measure outcomes. You want to have standard metrics. Everybody should be on the same page. That goes without saying. A lot of times this gets overlooked. Each department has their own outcomes or measures to bring it all together, so that you can adapt the change together and move forward, versus getting stuck in areas where I think we saw a lot of people getting stuck in the silos and the misalignment. And so at the end of the day, the goal is to really get to that omni-channel world in the most efficient way today, so that we can actually get content to our customers when they want it, how they want it. And as we're starting to adapt Gen AI into our marketing practices, then we leverage all of that information and data so that we can create marketing campaigns using AI, as well as hyper-personalization and content creation at scale. And so with that, I want to open it up to questions and answers. So Carol, I know you're going to help us navigate the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Shetal. This was so great and really informative. So if you have a question, please put it into the Q&A or the chat. I'll be monitoring both. A couple have come in already, and some people shared some in advance. Some we've answered live, but the ones I think are still outstanding is what industries are leading the charge at integrating omni-channel? What companies should we be looking to as a guide? Can you touch on
Yeah,
that?
I look at the big consumer brands. I think, I am a big believer. This is a great question because I'm a big believer in look outside the industry and learn a lot. Take the blinders off for just a few minutes, right? Because then we can be really wild and creative. When you think about, examples of real true integration, you've got examples in consumer brands that are, Coca-Cola. You've got consumer brands that are like Duolingo. They're really starting to think through the next set of, what does Gen AI help with in the next product creation, the next level of engagement, the next level of marketing campaign, automating a lot of this. And so those are some really big brands that I think have embraced. I always love to look at case studies of other brands outside of our industry and then bring those learnings in and then put our compliance and legal and our regulatory kind of hats on to make sure that we're staying within the framework of our industry. But those, I love that question because I think looking at those brands is going to be key. They're leading. They've already embraced a lot of technology. They continue to evolve how they use it. So great question.
Here's another one I think is also really interesting because you talked about the industry being a little bit slow to adopt. It says, what is the best way to bring data from print into integrated data? So like maybe it's like digitization of records, or I think that's what it's referring to.
Yeah, so so data from print is really essentially you've sent something out, right? So the feedback loop isn't always there, but there is a touch point. And, if you look at historically, about 20% of print, we have these Dear Doctor letters that we've sent out in print that 20% essentially get open. So email is probably the better way to track. But when you've got some type of print campaign or a leave behind, it's usually augmented with some digital aspect as well. And so I would measure it in that way. Message recall, message resonation, like really think through how you can measure that additional touch point that you've added. And so as you're measuring, I've sent this out, now I've got someone in person or some type of interaction digitally, is a recall better or about the same? I would look at it in that way.
So someone asked, how do you think life sciences can adopt AI? I think you've talked about that quite a bit, but perhaps, as people are walking away, what's like one next step, Shetal, that they can take to really kind of take that next step towards adopting AI in their organization?
Yeah, so again, it's a broad question because AI is a lot, right? And the focus of this webinar was marketing and Gen AI. I think within life sciences, if you really want to start somewhere, start with the very least, trying to take the data that you have and gaining insight from it. And so leveraging AI in what you've got in existing data, what type of customer insight can you gain from it? Sounds simple. It's not the easiest, right? But that's a great place to start because you've already got the existing data. You can really think through how. The other aspect would be measuring campaigns. There are a lot of companies that are actually doing this. You can measure how your sales teams are doing live, how your campaigns are working online. So bringing all of that data together and understanding what works and what doesn't work. And so you can reallocate your resources very, very quickly in that way.
So Shetal, would you like to leave any final words just as we're closing out?
So in closing, thank you, Carol. I would say, I think the opportunity is now for us to get omni-channel right. And I think we've got about a good 50% of companies, including the survey results today, that are actually on the journey in a solid way and potentially getting it right. So I think that's great. Everyone else needs to sort of catch up so that when we get to the opportunity of leveraging Gen AI and that content and hyper-personalization at scale and campaign through the AI engine, we can actually truly take advantage of the efficiencies that are there. We are going to compete on a lot of different levels. Like I said, it's a very noisy world already. It gets even noisier. And so making sure that you've got that engine solid now is going to be key. And at the end of the day, change is not easy. So keep in mind, bring the humans with you. I know the robots are taking over, but this is also a human-centric world. And collaboration with Gen AI versus replacement with Gen AI, I believe, is the next 10 to 15 years. And you'll hear a lot of people who are very embedded into AI also say that as well. So those are my closing remarks. I really want to thank Aquent again. Thank you, Carol, for your help facilitating this. And Elizabeth, thank you for the introduction. I'm going to hand it back over to you to close.
Yes, thank you so much, Shetal, for this very engaging presentation. And I certainly like the quote, engagement has become the new loyalty. And now with all the materials and everything we do in marketing, now we just need to learn how to scale it so it's very, very compliant. And I hope that all of you who listened to this presentation got something out of this that you can take back to your businesses. We will send out the webinar replay by Friday, so you can listen to it again if you so choose, but also feel free to share these presentations with any colleagues that might benefit from it. Also feel free to reach out to me with any questions, or if you would like to discuss how Aquent can help you incorporate Gen AI solutions, we are very happy to help you there as well. My email is in the webinar chat, and you can always, of course, visit our website. Thank you very much again for joining us with this webinar today, and goodbye.